Michel Barnier, thank you so much for speaking to CNBC here from Aix-en-Provence. So it's exactly a year since the snap election in France that opened a period of turbulence, also opened a period when you became Prime Minister before your government was ousted. And a key issue was the budget, the budget deficit. You were trying to bring the deficit back to 5%. The current government is trying to bring it to 5.4%, and they are struggling to do so. They announced an extra 5 billion euros of savings that they need to make. Do you think they're going to meet their target this year?
I hope so. But in any case, it will be very difficult. Because, in fact, since this snap election, dissolution, nobody understood at that time why the president decided to provoke this snap election. We have no majority. And if I may say, we are in kind of dead end street today. And what I understood when I was the Prime Minister of France is that many parties are focused on the next election, more focused on the next election than working for the next generation. And it is the real problem of France. And it will be the case until 2027, where we have the chance and the possibility to have a new president and a new majority.
And the difficulties we're seeing are about this year's budget, let alone the 2026 budget, where they have to find an extra 40 billion euros in savings. Do you think Prime Minister Bayrou, who is presenting some of the axes for that budget in the next few weeks, do you think can survive the autumn and the negotiations about the budget?
Frankly speaking, I hope so, because I know the price of the instability. I know the price of to be stopped, blocked by the French Parliament. It was my situation in December, and the instability has a huge price for France. So I hope that the Prime Minister will succeed, and I hope he will find much more responsibility than I found in the French Assembly. The French Socialist Party was non-responsible, and many others too.
We've seen the debt ballooning. It's 116% of GDP. It looks like it's going to go up for the next 2 years.
Yes.
Has the French government just lost control of public finances?
No, I don't think so. But I think that we need, at the level of the Prime Minister, the future French President in 2 years from now, the Minister, huge courage. The French politician needs to have courage and time. What was lacking for me was the time. So I think that we have a new possibility to put France ahead and the right street and the right road in 2 years from now.
You talk about political courage, and yet there's this huge political fragmentation in France. There was a poll released today that showed that the far-right leader, Jordan Bardella, was the most popular politician in France at the moment. How concerned are you about the political landscape in France, and do you see the far-right potentially winning the next election?
But I am very concerned. But there is no fatality, if I may say, for the election of somebody from the far-right. If the center-right party, my party, the Republicans, from the Republican right, and together on the side with the Centrist party, are able to work together, as we succeed to do so when I was the Prime Minister.
Do you think you can gather those centrist forces behind you? I know you tried to be a candidate in the last presidential election for the centre-right party. Would you put your name out there again?
I don't know if I will be a candidate. It's too soon. And please, we have to respect the steps in the next 2 years. The next election will be a local election, which are very important, just to give the proof that we are able to work together at the local level. And next step will be the presidential election and the general election. So the first step is the local election and to work on the program, on our project, the ideas for France. And once again, we will need time, if the French people will do so, and courage.
May I ask you about the pension reform? It's back in the headlines again. There's a reopening of the conversation around this, the unions negotiating some tweaks potentially to present to the government. How do you see the reopening of this kind of Pandora box of French politics? Is it just poisoning and focusing a lot of attention in the debate, or do you think it is important to address this issue?
It's important to trust and to have confidence for the social dialogue, in any case. And what I did when I was Prime Minister for many issues and topics. But I think looking at the financing problem for the pensions, it's not a good idea to reopen the point of the age for the pensions. But around this problem, there is many other issues very important for the French people, women, the very difficult works and jobs, and the long-term jobs where we have a margin of progress and a room for maneuver and progress for the people.
And of course, this complex domestic scene is within a more and more complex international scene, and we're getting closer to the deadline on the pause of the tariffs from the US. Now I'm going to ask you to have your European and negotiator hat on. What, in your view, should the EU's position be in these negotiations with the US? Some say they should be more aggressive, some say they should water things down to keep the Trump administration sweet. Where do you see the response should be?
The first point is to be united, as we succeed to be facing this nonsense divorce of the Brexit. And the second point is not to be aggressive, to answer to your question, but to be firm. Mr. Trump is aggressive against us, and frankly speaking, I don't understand. If I look at the interest of the United States, the medium and the long term, and our interest is not to be aggressive against each other. We need to rebuild, to build a transatlantic long-term partnership. For the reason I don't understand the trade aggressivity of Mr. Trump, and if this aggressivity will continue, we have to be firm, and it will be a lose-lose game, but it is the reality.
Because we saw countries like Canada, for example, drop their digital services tax, and some people are saying Europe should do the same or water down some of their rules to appease the Trump administration. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I think we have to be respectful because we are allies. Alliance does not mean allegiance. But if there is still US aggressivity on trade, I think the Europeans must be united and firm and respond.
What does that mean in terms of Europe's relationship with China? Because we know for a while that we're talking about decoupling or de-risking the relationship with China. Now it looks like some European countries like Spain want to repivot towards Asia. What's your view? Is that a mistake potentially?
I was in China a few weeks ago, and what this big country is doing is impressive. So we have to be very realist face in China, but I think we have a reason to keep a good relation with China without any kind of naivety. And what I said in my speech at this conference in Beijing is simply to say that we are ready at the European level to define our interests, strategic interests, independently of everything, independently of our relation with the United States, independently of our past. We are looking where are our European interests and to protect these interests. And my last sentence was, I think that a great country like Russia is able to understand what I mean. We need to be able to define our interests independently.
President Macron is doing a state visit to the UK next week. So we've talked a lot about a reset of the relationship between the EU and the UK, especially after the arrival of Keir Starmer in Downing Street. It's been a lot of that in words, less in action. Of course, they have to work together now. So how do you see the relationship evolving from now between the UK and the EU?
There is a large page for maneuver and to improve our relations. Personally, when I was the chief negotiator for the EU. My regret was that Mr. Johnson at that time refused to open a new chapter for the negotiation for security, external policy, defense, and even cooperation in Africa against poverty. I think on all these issues, and perhaps some others, for instance, what we can do about energy, what we can do together to invest in artificial intelligence, I think there is lots of ways without putting into risk our trade agreement. No way to reopen this trade agreement, no way, because it's simply to protect our single market, and it was a choice of the UK to leave, not our choice. I think if that point is very well understood, I think we have a lot of issue and space to reinforce. If you look at what happened in the Middle East, for instance, we have France and the UK, a long and sometimes tragic common history in the Middle East. So it is, in my view, our common responsibility to work together and to find a solution for peace and stability in the Middle East.
Because you mentioned Middle East, a lot of people have said, given the recent events, that Europe has become insignificant when it comes to these big world events. What do you think of the current situation and Europe's response?
Yes, I think that there is not far from the reality, because we have not yet a strong and common foreign policy in that part of the world. The reason why I wish that UK and France, which have reasons to work together, will be able to act together. But in any case, we all know that the US is, the position of the US is nevralgic and key in the Middle East, and I hope that thanks to this position, that we can find a solution to have a ceasefire, the liberation of the hostage, and finally to be able to be around the same table to build a pact of stability in the Middle East. And in that case, I think the European Union, including the UK with us, will be able to be around this table.
Very final question. In your recently published book, you mentioned an authoritarian drift in Brussels and about the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, wanting to decide on everything. Can you just tell us what you mean by that?
I'm sorry, but I never write this sentence, never. It was a mistake. I just said what is the reality in Brussels. There is less and less collegiality and more presidential management. And I regret that the collegiality, which is at the heart of the Commission, the Commission is a college, I regret this lack of collegiality today. It is the only point I mentioned.